Alrighty, good morning everyone. Thought I'd do a quick little video. It's been a while. Things have escalated quite dramatically in the world, it seems. But unlike other news and things like that, I'm going to try and keep my argument consistent. Instead of jumping around and just talking about things or jumping on things that might be popular or something like that. But I'm actually going to use the current situation to kind of outline what my critique and an observation of the current situation we're in. So basically I started talking and saying things based on these vaccine mandates, which when I started doing that, it's funny because as soon as I realised this was going to be a thing, as soon as it started affecting me personally, my instant reaction was like, oh, that's really weird. This is a strange thing happening. This seemed like I've witnessed things like this before. Like maybe this is just a temporary little blip. To the point where I remember going just before they came in, because I knew a fair way in advance where we were going, because I actually had a gig cancelled because, and this was the weird thing, it was like, I knew this was coming as well. I knew the employers were going to have pressure put on them to have their employees be vaccinated, because I was looking at that in my own business and thinking, well, I don't really want to, sometimes I need to hire people, sometimes I need to have people work for me, and I was like, I don't want to go through that. I'm not going to make anyone have a vaccine to do work for me. And it's actually incredibly, it's an incredibly like cowardice way to try and to push these things through. To a point where I was always amazed that more people weren't standing up against it, but that's just the power of persuasion. When you get persuaded that much, especially if it's a safety thing, especially if they throw these, elderly and children things at you, it's a very powerful tool. And so I saw that happening, and because the arrangement between venues, promoters and musicians, I saw that we were probably going to be classed as employees in that system, and that then it was the onus had been put on either the promoter or the venue, because of liability and things like that, to make sure we were vaccinated. So I saw it coming very, very early, and just knew that I wasn't going to partake in that type of thing. And the only reason I've been able to speak about it is just because I work for myself, because I don't have that on myself. So I don't have to enforce myself to be vaccinated. And so that was the only reason. I just was in a very clear position to actually say something about this, whereas the majority of you aren't and weren't. And so it's not so much that I have an extreme view, it's I have a particularly unusual, statistically, position in which I am free from those things. And then being in that, as soon as I started talking, I started coming into contact with people that were less in that position. So we're actually getting completely screwed, like teachers and things like that. And that just kind of just urged me on to keep going with something. And what I kept getting to was that the majority of this problem comes from top-down policy making. And it flows just down that. It's always it's someone in, like, it's the premier telling the businesses, and then they tell the thing, and it's like that. And that is just, or the pharmaceutical companies telling them to do this, and the scientists. See, it's never, the science is directly coming from these companies. And that's, I think, funnily enough, it's a hard pill to swallow, but that is the case. And these companies that have produced these vaccines and are marketing them, they haven't even done the research. The research has, in most cases, been done by, a lot of times by public money in institutions and things like that. And then the technologies are bought by these massive companies, and then they do what they do. They market them and they sell them, and they're very, very good at that. And so I'm gonna try and navigate my way through what the argument that I'm trying to make. But basically, this is how I'm gonna do it. I have personally, I had my first child, my son, who's now 14, when I was just before I turned 21. So I was 20 years old. I didn't come from like a wealthy family or anything like that. I was put into the thing to work and provide for children quite early. Not really early historically, it's actually quite late, but it's like in the current way that society is, that was quite early. And so I did that. You know, there was a lot of things. I wasn't perfect. I was 20 years old, so I was dealing with the same things most 20-year-olds are dealing with, while also having this thing of being a parent. And the societal reaction to that is always, well, that's irresponsible. You had a child when you were young. You know, why did you do that? A lot of those things, and it comes down to, it's like, what I did is a natural thing that exists. People have been doing it for millions of years. Just because we have more things to lessen the likelihood of that happening, that still can happen, and that is actually a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's like, whenever that, you know, people in the world, children are a wonderful gift to our lives. And in my life, it was definitely that. So anyway, I got on with it. You know, it was bumpy. It was a bumpy ride, for many reasons. But when you're in that position, you kind of do what you want. I actually planned when I was young what I wanted to do. I was going to go into marketing or advertising or something like that, and, you know, gain experience there, or try and educate myself, or do any of those things. And that kind of, the minute that that it was clear we were having a child, that I was having a child, it's like that all got put to the side, along with a lot of other things. And so it became less of like what I wanted to do, and more of like what was available and what was the best way, like the most, you know, how could I basically do the best for right now. And that was why I went into building and construction and things like that, and was like ambitious in that area early on, and did a lot of things in that. But that work, and it's the same as there's so many people now, whether they're mining or they're in construction or any of these physical jobs, it's hard to quite tell when you're very young, but it is amazingly demanding on your body in a way that I just think most people that haven't experienced that don't understand. And so I was for a long time, very, very good. I was, typical young guy. Like I didn't take that seriously at all. I just, if I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm the strongest. We do all this stuff, and so very slowly, after about probably 10 years or something like that, within that, there just starts to be little things like your back might be doing this thing, or I personally had massive problems with my hips, but that was taken as back pain. If you have pain in your hip, it's very hard to tell whether that's your back or your hip. And so my story, and don't worry, this will lead to my argument where I'm going, but that pain in my hips, through the medical, normal doctors, and that medical system that we're so much relying on right now to navigate us through this worldwide event, just in that, and I was seeing good people and different people and all these types of things. It took me 2.5 years within that system to identify the problem away from my back and to my hips, because back pain is this massive elephant in the room to do with the medical industry. They can't fix it. At all. It is such a huge thing that brings so much misery to people in the world, and yet these medical systems keep kind of inviting people in and saying, yeah, we can help you, but they actually can't. So 2.5 years just to find out it wasn't my back and that it was my hips. And then that started me on a process down, okay, well, it's my hips. I got pushed into the hands of surgeons, and it starts becoming this thing that's like, oh, okay, your hips are just bad. You've just got bad hips. Started small, and I remember it's a constant balance between like, oh, I've got bad hips. It's like, no, I'm strong. I haven't got bad hips. I just need to sort my way out of this. And then it's like that you keep going into that and you just keep getting further into the weeds, to the point where I ended up seeing, now luckily, I have an orthopedic surgeon in my family who I contacted very early on. Now, he must be an outlier to this system, or maybe it's the family connection, I don't know what it is, but he did very strongly push me into and say that you don't need a hip replacement, because basically I got told by, this was in between, I went to see one surgeon and was told, like, walked in there, okay, these are my x-rays, yep, this, and his professional expert opinion was, after looking at them for 2 minutes, was you need both your hips replaced at some point. They're completely fucked. Completely no good. You're just gonna at some stage need that. So you're just gonna have to learn to deal with the pain in that. We can get you some pain meds or something like that if you need. You maybe, some physio might be helpful just to fucking get you through to that point where you get your hip replacement. And as a person, I do have a thing against authority, but I also do listen to experts and do listen to those things. So I did listen to that. The moment that I was told that, I fell down a cliff of just, oh, okay, well, my hips are broken. I'm a broken person. There's something wrong with me. This is something I can't fix. You're on a train to nowhere trying to figure out how you're going to pay to get this massive surgery done. And one of the things that also the surgeon said, he not only told me that my hips were broken and that I needed to get them replaced, which literally involves, this is the head of your leg, chopping that off and putting another thing on there. Chopping people's fucking legs off, right? Sometimes that's really necessary, okay? Sometimes that is a miracle of science and technology and all those things. I totally agree with that. Sometimes it's not. And also within that, what he said was, you'd better get some private health insurance, the best private health insurance you can get, to afford this and pay for this miracle procedure that's going to happen, that I'm going to do, that I'm, basically the bee's knees in and, that. Now, that took me down. There was about a year after that where I would do little bits and pieces, and I'd already tried. I'd been trying to build up some things and be like, maybe it isn't this, maybe I can fix this. After that, it was just a year, just boom. I got so much worse. I basically accepted my fate. All my priorities went into not fixing my body, but paying for this surgery, this miracle surgery that I'm going to get from this medical system. Now, at some point, I started getting skeptical of that one surgeon. And so I went and saw another surgeon and got told the same thing. And after that, I was like, I was just completely 100% on board. I'm like, well, I'm just a broken person. There's something wrong with me. Luckily, they can fix it. These experts, these fucking amazing people can fix it. Isn't that great? And I started getting into that thing of like, well, this is a technological thing that is wonderful. I'm so lucky. Now, somewhere within that, I started, I'd been trying to build up my body and do different things and exercise and stretch and do all these things. And somewhere within that, I started discovering a few different things, a few different resources online, in the hopes that, because what I'd been told is like, well, if you can build your body up, build your muscles up, when you get the hip replacement, you'll handle it better. So that was what I was doing. I was trying to build my knees, everything, because when your hips are bad, it's like everything else downstream just goes to shit because you're not using your body as it's meant to be used. And so I hadn't really even noticed, but I was in terrible condition in that area. Like I just had degraded so much that it was actually shocking. So I started building up things like my knees and found these resources of things that were just, I'd never heard of, never seen anything about, saying that you can fix these things. And still to those points, I was like, well, I can fix my knees, but that's good. I can fix my knees so that way when I get my hips replaced, maybe I can be back to normal. And that was always the context I was looking through. It's like, I'll get stronger so that when I get my hips replaced, I might be a bit better. I might be able to surf. I might be able to do these things, whatever. Now, as I kept going on that, it's really slow to start with, and it just keeps getting gradually more. It's like you fix your knees and then something else goes and you go, well, okay, now I can do this thing. And you push it a bit harder and you go, okay, well now I'm doing this thing that I haven't done in 10 years. I feel better than I felt in 10 years. And then you start noticing things like my hips don't hurt in this way. So basically like my hips had like 20% of the movement that they should have. And then it would get to 30%. And I'd be like, that's more. And then it would get to 40%, 50%. Now, all the way through this was not pleasant. I took no pain things, and it would literally, some days it would be excruciating. Because what I'm doing, it's like, because I had restricted the movement in my hips, I was, I'm guessing, this is a guess, I'm not a scientist or an expert, but I'm guessing there's some type of calcification or something within that socket that builds up, and if it gets the cue that you're not moving in those areas, it goes, okay, I'm just going to build stuff up in those areas. Or maybe not even, it's like, I think it just builds it up because that's the natural process. And if you're not smoothing it out all the time, then it just gets kind of hard and doesn't move. So then when you do it, it's extremely painful. Extremely painful. Now, the experts tell me that they need to fucking put me to sleep, pull my hip socket out, grind that down with the fucking thing, and then put it back in, mate. You should be fucking apples. Now, there is no difference to that than what I do. I'm a person that works on physical things my entire life. Like, I build things, I craft things, I do all those things. Like, I understand that process. But that is not the process with fucking human beings. At all. Like, the process I went through was extremely painful and extremely, like, it took a lot of mental acuity and, like, just perseverance to get through it, because you just deal, like, so much pain that it's like, I would spend, I had to do these long processes because it would literally be so painful that you had to just start and then go for like about 3 or 4 hours of just absolutely just wearing down that build up in your hip, or like using muscles into a point and stretching them, mentally stretching them, using your brain to move things and move your limbs in ways that you wouldn't normally do. And basically the whole thing is just a massive exercise in pain. And through that, I now am getting to the point where I feel pretty much like I'm at the point when I was maybe about 22, and then maybe 22, 24, but rapidly accelerating through that back to a point where I'm at my peak of physical thing, which I played a lot of sport, I surfed, I did a lot of things when I was young, and I'm getting back to those points where I'm effortlessly moving again. And that has all been done in a rejection of this machine of the medical industry. That it's the problem is, it's like, this can sound like I'm attacking surgeons or attacking doctors or attacking private health or anything like that. There is a portion of that, and I am very pissed off at this, very pissed off, as I'm sure a lot of you are for different things, especially recently. But that doesn't do anything. There just needs to be an open dialogue with these things. And the thing is, it can't be an expert versus thing, because I'm a fucking expert in me. You might be an expert in the books you've read and all these things, but when it comes down to my body, I've been living in this thing for 36 years. And I know it intimately. I know every part of it. I know every little twitch. I know every little feeling, everything that goes on within it. And so I am an expert in me. And the way that you all, fucking doctors, surgeons, whatever the fuck you are, need to completely flip is to realize that your job is to help the person, not to make money. Help the person, help to like listen to the fucking person, and then try and help them if you can. And if you can't, you need to say you can't. And if it's not in your wheelhouse, you know what I mean? If it's a nail, if you've got a hammer and everything's a nail, if it's not a nail, then get the fuck out of there and leave it alone, and don't try and sell someone something in 10 years down the track. Because this is what is going on, and it's going on everywhere. And I know, because I'm in business, I'm in these things, I understand how this shit works. But the problem is you can't, this is where sometimes, it's not so much like, business can work in things like this. You can run a business. But if you're running it at short-term things, like basically, it's looking like maybe a whole bunch of this thing right now is going to come under attack and be completely disregarded because you took short-term things on a long-term reputation that who knows whether you've done permanent damage to it. And this is across the board. Some of the most like potentially beneficial people in the world have basically turned into used car salesmen. en masse with a system that protects them. Now all of that I just explained was all a voluntary interaction that I had with this system. And that still happened. You know what I mean? It's like if I go to McDonald's, that's a voluntary interaction that I'm having with that company. They might not have the best food. It might not be very good for me, but I like it. It tastes fucking good. And I eat it. It's really convenient. It's there. It's a voluntary thing. It's the same thing if I want to go have a beer. Voluntary interaction with that company. What's happened in this last 2 years, or year and a half, or whatever it is of this vaccine, is the complete, just conglomeration of a system that's already doing that, and then making it mandatory, using coercion to do it, making it a monopoly, making it the only thing, like politically making it that. And it's just like the reason I have sat here and had this strong stance is because it's like I happen to have the ability to do it, and I didn't need to get the vaccine to have a job. And I'd had this direct experience with the medical industry, and in another way as well, which I might talk about later, which is mental health, which is fucking even worse than this shit. And those two things, plus the fact of like having children already at an age where there was no way I wasn't gonna do this. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this video here. I wanted to get into how we can possibly fix it without, but I don't wanna G people up to go and throw fucking rocks at surgeons and doctors and things like that. That is not what I want. That is not how I wanna go. It's like, the thing is, you look at Putin right now, invading Ukraine, bad guy. You know what I mean? World's labeling him as a bad guy. It's like, don't underestimate the ability for you to be in that situation. If you're a doctor or a surgeon or a medical advisor or a politician or anything like that, you are right there. You are right there doing the same thing. And I think this is where I get to this point where I do just believe there is this humanity and the way we are, it can't continue down this path. Things aren't like that. I look at nature and I see everything works very beautifully in a lot of cases. There's evil and there's things like that. There's things kill each other and but not within systems like this. And even when it does happen, it's like there's a balance to it and things like that. So, but I don't see this. What I do is animals, they live, and they may get injured and they persevere through that, but they're not bringing injuries onto themselves by these beliefs. I was never injured. There was nothing wrong with me. What was wrong with me is that I probably worked too hard because of different reasons, worked in the wrong ways, and just society isn't built to improve people's bodies. And I got out of alignment with my natural state of being as a human being, as an animal, as a creature that's designed to move. That's what's wrong. Nothing mechanically wrong. I don't need my alternator changed. I don't need my oil changed. That is mechanical thinking. And it's the same thinking as mass vaccination. All these things, it's like, we do really well when we're just free to move, free to do things. And we need to stop looking at ourselves and society as this machine that can be fixed. It doesn't get fixed. We fix ourselves and then that feeds out into society. I'm gonna leave it here, right on, bang on 30 minutes. And I'll do another one when I can figure out how to approach some other things. Thank you.